Hello and welcome back to the Aligned Living podcast. This is Aisha DeLune, and today I'm going to be talking with you about intentional parenting. Now, if you're a parent, listen on. If you're not a parent, but you have a child in your life that you care about, maybe you're a grandparent or you're an auntie or an uncle, or you play a role in the lives of your children's friends, then it's worth listening into this too, because this podcast is about setting your intention of how you want to be with the children in your life. So I wanted you to know that you are welcome, whether you're a parent or not. But I'm going to be speaking about it from the parenting lens, but you could certainly adapt it to your situation. What I'm going to be talking about today is what I call a parenting charter. So parenting is very tough. And the more you care about being a good parent, the tougher it is, and the more self-judgment there is, and the more questions there are, and the more pressure you put on yourself. I totally get it. I brought a lot of pressure to my parenting because it was so important to me to do the best job that I could. So something that I developed really early on with myself was what I call the parenting charter. And I'm going to, in this episode, describe what a parenting charter is, how to build one, and why it's super beneficial. Now, what is a parenting charter? Think of it as an overarching document that clarifies your role. So it's effectively parenting with the end in mind. So it outlines kind of like the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve, the skills that you wish your child to have by the time they reach adulthood, assuming that you're kind of intending for them to have, and have independence. We're looking at, well, what are the skill sets that they will actually need for that to be their lived experience. This document is not a sit down kind of one and done. It's a living, breathing guidance tool to support you through all the ages and stages of raising your child. And I suggest that you work on it over time and that you check in with it periodically, like at least 4 times a year. I'm a business owner, so I think in quarters, but at least 4 times a year, and just check in and go, rightio, am I on track? What's working? What's not? And if there's 2 of you on this parenting journey, still check in, but you're still doing it as an individual. Even if you're a team, you're still like a doubles tennis team, you're both still playing your own game. So it would be good to still check in and ask that question, like, how am I doing? And perhaps part of your check-in would be kind of feeding back with each other, like, how do you think I'm doing? Or offering up what you see in each other. Because often one of the beautiful things about long-term relationships is that they can be like a soul mirror. Someone can see something in you, which might actually be how well you're doing, that you just don't see, or they might be seeing something that's a bit of a blind spot. So if you're working with another parent, still do that individual check-in, and you maybe just add on that other step of checking in with each other if you choose to. So, how to build a parenting charter. So it's multifaceted, which is why it's not sit down kind of, half an hour and you're done kind of a situation. But if you think about, now this is however old your child is, if you think about your kind of independent adult child, just give some thought to what are the practical skills that they're going to need. And I recommend kind of a few sections. So the first is domestic. So if your child was living independently, living on their own somewhere, what skills would they need? And that will help you put in place the same thing if they were living in a share house or they were living with a partner. They're still going to need all of the same skills, assuming you want them to be in a situation where other people are willing to continue living with them. So let's go domestic. Okay, maybe they're going to need to be able to cook healthy meals. They're going to need to know how to use all of the machinery that's part of living at home, like a washing machine, a dishwasher. They're going to need to learn how to clean a bathroom so it doesn't grow mold, and a toilet. They're going to need whatever it is, domestic skills. There might be basic repair stuff that you want them to know about. Then I would get you to have a think about, okay, relational skills. Again, if we want people to enjoy their relationships with our adult child, to have our child have a life that's has as many people in it as they want, or relationships and intimacy that they may want, what are the skills that are required for close, meaningful relationships? Now, I'm not telling you what the skills are. I'm just giving you some broad strokes for you to do your own thinking. So you think about your own domestic stuff that you think is important. Your stuff might be different to mine, and think about your own sense of what are the skills that your child needs for relationships. And I'm going to give you some ideas, but this isn't to tell you what every child needs. It's just to give you some ideas, and then you do your own. So they might need to know like what caring is, like the actions of it. How do you show someone that you care about them? It might be like the skills for self-reflection. I actually think that's a really important skill, and it's not innate. It actually has to be learned. The skill of self-responsibility, the framework of self-esteem, so that they don't end up a doormat or the victim of someone really manipulative. The ability to recognize when they're being treated well or not. The skills, like the verbal communication skills, to be able to stand up for themselves and maybe stand up for others if what's happening isn't acceptable. The communication skills, to share how they feel, to ask for what they want, to get curious about, the impact that they have on other people. Learning to apologize in a way that actually lands as an apology. So not that I'm sorry you feel that way thing, which anyone who's ever poured their heart out to someone that's really done something that hurt them and the person says, I'm sorry you feel that way, you understand that actually doesn't land in any way like an apology. So learning like the skill of apology, the skill of repair, when everyone at some point does something that hurts someone else's feelings, like how do you repair from that? Creating a framework for respect, like self-respect, respecting others. You might want to have a think about, like, do you want them to respect? Like, what is respect? Is it pretending that every adult is more important than you? Or is it everyone older than you is more important and respect is silence, or respect is agreement? Or are you going to teach them that respect is, I have an alignment with your values? So you get to choose, but just have a think about it. Practicing, being able to put their feelings into words so that people can understand where they're at, that kind of thing. But just ask yourself, okay, in terms of relationships, what are the skills? What makes a really good, healthy, long-term, fun, satisfying relationship, and what are the skills? And you know what? You may not have those skills, and that's okay, because you can learn as you go. Parenting is a long time, so you've got a long time to kind of stay ahead of the curve and learn as well, and everyone benefits. I think parenting, certainly for me, has been the greatest personal development exercise ever this lifetime, because it's held me really accountable to what I believe in and who I want to be. So another area you might want to think about is financial. So, okay, for this independent adult, what skills do they need? So you might need to teach them some basic money management. And there's really simple, ways of teaching young kids about that. Sometimes it's really simple, like, when you get money, you spend some, you save some, you share some. There's more sophisticated models. I am a big fan of money management, and I often, as the kids got older, you can have percentage-based models where a percent goes into this and a percent goes into long-term savings and a percent goes into saving for your car or whatever it is. So it can be sophisticated or not, but a lot of young people run into financial issues because they weren't necessarily taught money management. And I could go on, but I'm going to do just one more thing that you might want, one area you might want to think about, and there'll be plenty, potentially plenty of them for you. But the other one you might want to think about for that independent adult, if you think about the happiest, most satisfied person you know. And I'm going to use the word success, but I do not mean material success. I mean someone who is, satisfied with what they've achieved in their life. If we break that down, at some point they have a skill set of dreaming or setting goals, like kind of that empowerment to be able to take action to create what calls to them on some level. I'm being broad. So this might be skill sets like, okay, if you've got a goal, how do we break it down into manageable action steps? Framing into your parenting teaching that life's about, maybe you've got a goal, you've got an intention, you want to learn something. So you try and then you just watch what worked, what didn't. Exactly like I told you to check in with your parenting charter at least 4 times a year. What's working, what's not, what needs tweaking, that kind of thing. So just teaching them this is life. Try something, see what works. We might have a hypothesis, it might go great, it might not, what needs tweaking, just normalizing this process of trial and correction. Because otherwise we can end up with adults that give up if they're not immediately brilliant at something, or give up if it doesn't work the first time, or worse, like just blame someone else that didn't work and then the end on their goal. So it's like the more we can normalize trial and correction, the better. And you have a great opportunity to do this when they're, learning to ride a bike or learning anything. Pretty much anything human beings learn comes with a process of trial and correction. But sometimes we forget to really name that as parents, and it's super useful if we do. So that's kind of like the overarching life areas, but you'll have your own kind of domestic, relationships, financial, dreaming goals, action taking, normalizing that nothing works perfectly the first time, and, trial and correcting our way to where we want to go. When I was doing this for the first time, I got a lot of my inspiration from looking at things that I didn't respect or things that annoyed me, and then reverse engineering. So you can do that too. If you think about like the person that that you worked with once, who was like your most frustrating person. Okay, what was it? Were they lazy? Were they didn't care if the rest of the team had to pick up the slack for them? Were they rude? What were they? And now reverse engineer. What's the opposite of that? Okay, well, the opposite of that is learning how to be a team player and learning about the impact that you have on others, that kind of thing. So you can look at things that you don't like, that don't align with your values, if that's a bit more palatable, and you can reverse engineer and go, okay, what are the skill sets in that? You can also look at what you admire and break down those skills. And some of it is literally skills, like, the learning to ride a bike, or learning money management, or learning, here's how you apologize if you want the person to really feel like you mean it, like they're skills. And some of it is kind of cultural within your family. And I'll get onto that in a second. So that's kind of enough of the practical stuff just for now. And I want to invite you then, while you're building your parenting charter, to think about the qualities that you feel make a fabulous adult. And obviously human beings are wildly diverse. This is not about pigeonholing your child into this cookie cutter version that you want them to be. But there's really broad spectrum things that you can bring in culturally as a family. So it might be things like curiosity, willingness to try things, demonstrated caring. It might be like seeing things through, like doing what you say you're going to do. And if you can't do what you said you were going to do for some reason, naming that, saying, oh, I know I said I'd do that on Monday, but I can't. This is the reason. I'm going to get to it then. Like communication. It might be honesty, that kind of thing. So thinking about the qualities that you feel make a fabulous adult, and you can brainstorm about that, and then you can kind of bring it down into the broad strokes of what you want to bring into your family and to your parenting. And lastly, I want to talk about how you want your child to feel about you. And this was really big for me. I can't remember when I heard it, but I remember it was a man, and he said, I never want my kids to think, oh no, I can't. I hope dad never finds out. I want my kids to be, I need to tell dad, he'll know what to do. And as a young, well, I wasn't really a young parent, but like someone young in my parenting journey, I was like, yes, I want to be a safe space for my children. I want to be the parent. If something goes wrong, they come to me and then they know that I'll be safe to communicate with. And it might not be that I love what they've done, but their first experience will be, I'm here, I'll support you, we'll get through this. I wanted to be able to cultivate that. And I'm really blessed that I heard that early on and that I created my first parenting charter. I did a bit of an edit when I had 2 teenagers instead of 2 young children. We needed to add some things I hadn't thought of early on, but I've had 2 parenting charters over my time as a parent. And my oldest child is 22 now. So how do you want your child to feel about you? And this might be where you want to think about, or what is the parenting style that I want to emulate? And there are all sorts of different parenting styles. And this comes up a lot when I work with anyone raising children, actually, and particularly in relationships. There might be one parent that likes that clear boundaries, really strong discipline, do what I say right now, no questions asked, harsh punishment style of parenting. And there might be someone else that wants a really connection, conversation-based style of parenting. So just have a bit of a think about how it is that you want your children to feel about you, how it is that and think about, like, on your best day, how do you want it to be? And if part of that is, well, I want my children to respect me, then what does that mean? Because if respect means they do what I say right when I say it, but they're not allowed to ask any questions and they're not allowed to be curious about why, well, then that's kind of domineering. It's not actually relationship based. And you're potentially not teaching them about how to manage their relationships later on in life. So you get to use this part of building a parenting charter. How do I want my children to feel about me? What style of parenting matters? To really think about, well, what are the ground rules going to be in this family? What are the ground rules going to be? What are the things that really matter? And this moves me into the third part of what I want to talk about today, which is why this matters. And it's the tricky part and it's the most empowering part, because when we really feel into, like, what is my role as a parent? What am I wanting to achieve? How do I role model this, or how do I actively teach this? What is the culture that I want to have in this family? We get to be empowered and we get to get super clear on what really matters. So one of the reasons that I needed to kind of edit my parenting charter when I had 2 teenagers was based on another bit of fabulous advice that I got from someone, which was pick your battles. Because I didn't want it to be that I was nitpicking, nagging, doing all of this annoying stuff that was not enjoyable for me at all and wasn't enjoyable for my kids at all. I needed to come back to being super clear about what really mattered. So when you put the time into a parenting charter and you put your time into the culture of the family and what matters, all of a sudden the pick your battles thing is super easy because you know what you're trying to create. So it matters for that reason. It matters for the simplicity. It matters for thinking about, I'm going to just pick something. Let's say it's like, I want my children to have a clean room. It's like, okay, why? What is that teaching them? Why is it beneficial? How does it link with my overall parenting charter and what I'm wanting to achieve? And then you can actually just explain that to your child, assuming that you're wanting a conversational style of parenting. Or you might go, you know what? Their bedroom's their space. and I'm going to let them keep it however they want because they're the only ones that have to live with the result of that, and I'm going to focus my efforts somewhere else. So it just kind of helps clarify, what am I going to make a big deal of? Where am I going to hold them accountable, and why? So it's clarifying and it's simplifying. The other thing that it really does, and it certainly did this for me, was it supported me to really break down. So what is the skill sets that I'm wanting? What is the culture that I'm wanting? And what do I need to emulate? So to give an example again, because this is obviously very broad, and I'm not saying how I did it is the way, but what I'm talking about with intentional parenting is when you do it your way and it's aligned. So it's actually really well thought out. It dismisses a lot of doubt. It dismisses a lot of self-judgment. It dismisses a lot of confusion as a parent, and it actually can support you to have really constructive conversations with your children in an age-appropriate way. So one of the things that I decided in my parenting is that my children were always allowed to ask questions. Always. Anything I wanted them to do, they were always allowed to ask why. Because I wanted to cultivate safety, like it's totally fine for you to ask questions, and I wanted curiosity, and I wanted to role model honesty, all of those things. So that way I was able to explain. Now, it's not like when they were little and I wanted them to have a bath and maybe they didn't want to have a bath or something like that. They were always welcome to ask why, and I could explain in an age-appropriate way or in a funny way or whatever it is that I wanted to do. But I wanted to establish really early on that they could ask me questions. Now, later on in life, there were people that were watching my parenting journey that would interpret that as disrespect. But because I had a parenting charter and it was very, very intentional, I was able to explain, this is right on track. This is my parenting strategy working. And watch this space. Just watch this space. They're allowed to ask questions. I'm explaining why. We still get where we need to go, but no one has been dismissed. Their ideas have been heard, where I wanted to create synergy even though I was the boss. But if I hadn't done the work to really be clear on what I was wanting to create and why, those conversations could have ended up being, a conflict. But they weren't. They were just, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. What you're seeing is completely in alignment with what I intend to keep doing. This is why, this is this. So it just created clarity. Now, in a parenting situation where there are two people, this becomes even more important, because when you've got a parenting charter and you work your way through it, you're able to really see the difference between what's happening when one parent is really unresourced and kind of barks something out as a parent that they want everyone to follow. It's so much easier to have conversations about that as opposed to it's something to come back to if we're really clear about, well, what's our parenting style that we're going for. If there's a bit of a mixture, then you can work on how to combine those things. And so when someone's resourced or unresourced, when someone does something kind of out of alignment, you're able as a couple to support each other. Whereas I find parenting that's not intentional, that doesn't have any kind of guardrails or any long-term strategy, it's so much easier to get lost and to spend time arguing with that very special other person that you're raising your children with. And often where you're down there arguing about they should have unloaded the dishwasher right when you said, and I was okay with them waiting 2 hours. You're arguing kind of about the detail. It gives you something to come back to. So you're back into the overarching plan. You're back into, okay, let's have a check-in. Is what I'm doing working? Is it not? Is the issue that I'm unresourced and therefore it's hard for me to parent in alignment with what I'm wanting to create? Is the issue that you and I need to get back on the same page? It just clears things up. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I know I've done it in a really broad way. Well, I feel like it was really broad, and I certainly haven't, given you a parenting charter, but it's just something that I wholeheartedly recommend because parenting is one of the most important jobs that we have to do on earth. And like anything, it's like having a business plan. It makes it really easy to know what to do with your spare time when you've got a plan because you've got a direction. And parenting is like such an important job, and it really helps to have that alignment, to know what you're doing. It certainly helped me during the phases of parenting where I was so tired and where it was exhausting. I could check in and go, well, I'm on track. I'm on track. I'm doing it how I want to do it. I'm doing it how I want to do it. I knew that ages and phases that things would change. Nothing's permanent. Everything shifts and changes. So when I had the long goal in mind, it made it easier to make it through those, challenging stages, all the way through to adulthood. So I wanted to share that. I really want to advise you to play with a parenting charter. Think about building one. Talk about it. If you're parenting with someone else, talk about it with them. And, sink into imagining how it might be beneficial, how you can, put in place things. Like if you, like all of those domestic skills, you might go, okay, over the next 10 years, I'm going to make sure that my child has, taken part and taken the lead in all of those family jobs so that I know by the time they leave home, they know how to do all the things or whatever. You can make it playful. You can have, if you've got little kids, you can have, you get to the end of the night and you can play spot what's not in the right place, right? Because you can make anything fun with little kids. And so you're training them to see what hasn't been put away, what needs to be done. We can play what needs to be done for like 10 minutes before we, have a story or whatever it is, whatever the fun thing is. Because it's a skill set to notice what needs to be done. So a lot of the things that we want to cultivate are skill sets, and we can start implementing them pretty much at any stage of your parenting journey. That said, if you already have quite, advanced children and you feel like, oh, it's too late for this. No, it's not. Book in a few sessions with me and we'll talk about how to change really established dynamics that aren't working for you. We absolutely can do that. If you're wanting help with a parenting charter because it feels too big, or you feel like you and your partner are too different, or you want to kind of think out loud about what you're wanting and you want support to put it into an age-appropriate plan, I'm absolutely willing to help you. Just book a discovery call in and we'll see how I can support you in your parenting charter so that you're parenting intentionally. Thank you so much for listening, and that's it for me today.